podcast. I'm your host for this episode, David White, and today I have two returning guests from a few episodes ago, Ethan and John. Ethan was on the Half-Life episode. I think was the last episode you were on.
That's
Is
correct.
That right, Ethan?
Yes, that's very right.
Yeah,
I love Half-Life.
I think John. Yeah. We are. I think I and Ethan will defend Half-Life to the death.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So how you doing, guys? Are you doing well?
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm doing just fine.
Yeah. Hello.
Super. All right. Yeah, we can hear. So, guys, what have you been up to this week? Been doing much? Been playing much? What have you been playing at?
I actually have been playing quite a bit of Resident Evil 4, so that's a very relevant
Oh, cool.
topic.
I haven't, stupidly. I really kept telling myself to have a refresh, because it has been a while since I last played it. Good few years.
It's been a while for me.
Yeah, and then I just kept putting it off and setting time aside, and then I ended up forgetting about it. So, but you know what? I still love it. It's still a great game, and a lot of it's still vivid in my memory, so I should be okay.
Yeah.
So, John, what about you? You've been playing Resi 4 as well, is it?
No. Like, I tried it, and the controls are. I don't know.
Well, we're gonna get into
they're
the
still, like wonky. Yeah.
Oh,
we're gonna get into
into
the
that,
specifics
yeah.
later. Yeah.
Yeah, but like it's basically just been wheeling from Black Friday sales for me, like as a
Oh,
baby,
really?
Oh,
just
I
kind of.
bet.
Oh,
Yeah. I've been getting in the games that I've ordered, like Nier Automata, Final Fantasy 15 Royal Edition, and a few others that are still coming in.
cool. Yeah, Black Friday stuff, man. I mean, I've worked in retail and I've worked in bars as well. It affects the bars too, and it's it's a horrible time to be working in retail or bars or restaurants. That's for sure.
I might as well have bought an entire console with the amount that I bought on Black Friday.
Welcome to the welcome to the Retail Rumble podcast, everybody. This is where we talk
Yes, we will discuss our wares.
What other things beginning with R could we do for this? I can't think of anything right now, but speaking of things that begin with R. Oh, actually, no, I should tell you about what I've been doing myself, of course. I've been on a bit of an adventure. For those who, well, I didn't really document it that much, but for those who follow my Instagram, I picked up a new console, a new addition to the old collection. And it's a fascinating console. It's a Philips CDI.
Oh boy.
You guys familiar with this machine?
I'm very familiar with it. Yeah. That is
many consoles that have
not
been...
so much with me. I want it though. I do want it.
That's an infamous console right there.
It's a hit and miss console because some of the games are somewhere between bizarre and terrible. Some games
Zelda CDI.
well, Wonder Gamelon and Faces of Evil and Zelda's Adventure and that. There's also Hotel Mario, which is itself apparently not that very good. Some people call it a worse version of Door, which says a lot, I think. Very few games were released for the system that were actually considered good. And even the ones that make like top 10 lists are just like passable. So it's a notorious console. It's a good-looking console. Well, the version I got is the good-looking console. I have the one of the 400 series, the 450 to be specific, and it's a nice-looking console. Its daddy, its predecessor, was kind of resembled a. I can't decide whether it was a late edition VHS player or a early edition DVD player. It's got that kind of look about it. This very very late 90s technology, kind of ugly. But the 400 series were smaller and they were much slicker looking. But
that's cool.
They looked like a console.
It's probably a CD player.
It played a bunch. I mean, it's a
cool.
it's a multimedia console. It wasn't weirdly enough when they launched them, they weren't really advertised to kids as such. They were more advertised as a kind of edutainment machine.
Right.
So all the software that was advertised for it were things like Compton's interactive encyclopedia, which I have, and God, did that feel like a waste of time, because in this day and age, of course, I have access to information at my fingertips. So I mean, it fascinated me in a way, because I thought, some time ago, some person sat at a table and thought, this will be a good idea. Let's put educational and informative stuff on a console. So yeah, the interactive. It was quite cool in a way.
Is it a rare
videos you could play?
Is it a rare find? Is it hard to find Philips CDI?
It is hard to find one in the condition I've got.
Wow.
Like most consoles, it's very hard to find one that is. It's very hard to find one in the wild, I guess. I didn't find mine in the wild, actually. I found mine on the Facebook Marketplace, but mine is boxed and complete, and that adds a lot to it. And it's also in very good condition as well. It's very clean. And funny enough, when I was... Thank you to the person who sold it to me. It was a guy called Dave. And I'm not sure if I want him to be listening because I'm going to say something wrong. When I went there, I travelled very far to get this, by the way. It was quite an adventure. Changed 3 times on a train, 5 hours there, 5 hours back. A very expensive train, well, not very expensive, but quite an expensive train ticket and an expensive console. But when I got there, we were testing it, and obviously I insisted on that. So he booted it up, and one game worked just fine. It was a golf game, I forgot what it was called. Very cool golf game. Sure. Cool looking anyway, not exactly hugely fun to play, but so when I got there, we tried one game and I tried another, didn't work. Tried another, didn't work.
Oh dang.
And I was like, okay.
That might be a lost cause, huh?
Yeah. I did think, there was part of me, like when he left the room, he had these 2 kids as well, so when he left the room I just sat there shaking my head, thinking I've travelled this far for a console I might not even buy. So I thought, I'm not going to make this a wasted journey. I believe that this is a fixable problem. So I said to him, how about I offered him basically just over half what I was going to pay for it. And he took it.
Wow, that's cool.
So I got it for a lot less, and now that I got it back, I've given it a bit of a clean. And it seems to be okay. A couple of games aren't really still giving. One game that I'm really disappointed isn't working is The Seventh Guest, which is an interactive drama. Terrible acting and all that stuff, you know. Because one thing you need to know about the Philips CDI console is that it utilizes video a lot. And this is why the games aren't so great, because they try to implement actual video onto games or into games. So you've got like characters who are real life actors standing there in front of the screen, in front of the game, talking to you. It's not digital or anything like that, it's not mocap or anything like that, it's actual video. So stuff like that is really cool. Just to look at, not to play, but just as a console, some of the games are just fascinating.
I bet. Ahead of its time, right?
Well, like it was mostly like there for education, though, right? Like which isn't a bad like concept, which Leapfrog obviously does and has done better.
That is
like
far better examples of educational toys.
David, that is a really cool find. I'm really fascinated to hear about this. That is really cool, though. I must say.
Yeah.
I was hoping to do an unboxing video at some point, so I'll give that a do.
Stay tuned, maybe. Stay tuned, maybe.
Yeah, there's still there's still plenty of other finds like out there to be had, like just in some of these basement probably or attic.
I bet.
Slightly off topic, but I was in this area I lived at. I knew, sort of mentally made a map of this area. What I was going to do was I was going to print out these leaflets saying, check your attic, because I want to buy any old video game stuff that you have in your attic, because I know someone out there that's got something marvelous in their attic, like a boxed Jaguar CD or something like that. You're just sitting there collecting dust. But I wanted to say it. This is what I wanted to do. I wanted to write the leaflet in a way that doesn't make me sound like a collector, because I know the moment I sound like a collector, they're going to try and get as much money off me as possible, right? So I was going to like play the I'm creating a video game museum, and or something like that. So we want your old tech, and preferably video games, So tell me what you got, and I'll come around and I'll offer you something for it. Because they think if I'm a collector, I might be a little bit more eager and I'll be a bit more willing to spend if they got something special. But you know what's going to happen? I'm just going to get like 40 copies of Streets of Rage or something like that, and or about 14 people contacting me about a Mega Drive that they've got that's dusty and horrible and no box, nothing, only no controller, no power supply, and it's just going to be that sort of stuff. So anyway, guys, so that's what I've been doing.
That's quite a bit.
I'm willing to travel, but I learned a lesson, and I probably won't be traveling like that again, because on the way back I almost missed every train. I was running constantly. I got on the train, got to the station, jumped on the train. Next train stopped at, I think my first stop was Crewe. Jumped off, had to run to the next platform because my train was late, but that train was late as well, which meant my running was completely pointless.
Welcome to
so
Adventures
I
in
got the
Collecting
platform with this huge box. It's funny, right? I got this big box and I was just like panting, going, I didn't even need to run. I remember running up these steps, my legs almost gave way because I was trying so hard to get to the top, and then the next train was exactly the same thing, running, and I didn't need to run because all the trains were delayed, so it was so stressful. But you know what? I got it. It's more or less working. I'm happy with it, and it's a big tick on my wish list. So there we go. That's my adventure for this week.
Congratulations, sir.
Yeah. All right, so let's plug on, guys. So let's have a look at the news. Not much has happened, to be honest. Let's dive into the news. Ralph Breaks the Internet, the sequel to Wreck-It Ralph, has hit the cinemas, and with mixed reviews. Now, I've not looked into it a lot.
Not from the internet. The internet broke in, I think.
So
That's a good way to put it, I guess.
So what about you guys? Have you guys seen it? Have you got? Are you interested even? I mean,
no, I am
personally, I'm not.
I'm very, very interested. I still hold that Wreck-It Ralph is the best video game movie of all time, even though it's not really actually
debatable.
Based off of a movie.
Yeah, it's debatable.
Well, I mean,
can get that.
It's kind of hard to say, because it's not really based off of a video game. But I'm very interested, and I just haven't gotten the chance to see it yet.
Honestly,
best game for video game fans, maybe.
Yeah.
But not video.
Honestly,
I debate.
I hold Super Mario Brothers as the best video game movie.
Oh my god! Get off this podcast.
I'm gonna sit down with this. Did you happen to watch or listen to the episode we did a while back on Mario? The Super Mario Brothers movie? I think it was episode 7, I want to say.
No,
might have been episode 5. Or 6 rather. But yeah, we've been covering video game movies. We haven't got back to it recently. We've done 2 episodes. First one was Super Mario Brothers, Street Fighter, and Double Dragon, which are basically the top 3 earliest, best, most notable, I should say, not best, video game movies. And then after that, we did. Oh god, what was the second? Mortal Kombat, I think.
Mortal Kombat.
Well, it's at least,
Kombat.
at the very least, it's looking like Ralph Breaks the Internet is probably going to be better than those movies. I think. What's the studio?
Oh, this I can say that without even watching it.
Yeah. Oh, I guarantee that for sure. Did you guys? Okay, neither of you have seen the movie yet. I haven't either. But did you guys at least watch the trailers going into this one? Because there's some pretty, I think, very impressive trailers. Disney is the one that makes Wreck-It Ralph, and they have obviously the whole premise of Wreck-It Ralph 2 is that they somehow defy the laws of computer science and travel through a power cable into the modem or whatever. And they go off into the internet, and there's like this entire section of the internet that's just devoted to like Disney related things. So you see like the Iron Man flying off into the distance as an X-wing is flying around. And then one of the main characters goes into this room filled with like Disney princesses and stuff. Make all these like really cool Easter eggs, and I'm assuming that the entire movie is filled with stuff like that. And
that's what I've never like I don't even really have any. I've never really had any interest in watching the second one. Like the first one, I thought was pretty good. Right? I thought it was really good, except for like when they break the car and whatnot. That was kind of dumb and pointless. But then the second one, and I heard about the second one coming out, I'm like not really excited for it. It's kind of like that feeling when I got when Fallout 76, with the trailer. I was like, not really. And then Battlefield 5, not really. Battlefield 2, no. Destiny, no.
Sure.
Do you know, my response to it was, my initial response was the first thing I heard was of course the title, and I immediately rolled my eyes, because when it said Ralph Breaks the Internet, I thought, oh, that is such a meme title. That is such a modern hip wannabe title. You know, it's this whole like, oh, someone breaks the internet,
It sounds like
and I just
right?
thought, oh, are they really? Yeah, kind of. I just thought, are they really going to go down that road? Are they really going to try and do this? Try and appeal to the current generation?
Like the emoji movie.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. There'll be a meme movie or something like that. Would be a sequel to that probably. Although that'd be quite interesting actually. That would actually be quite interesting. Like all these memes come to life or something like
It
that.
doesn't-
Like,
that video meme.
Yeah, and it doesn't quite seem like that.
It,
To be honest, it doesn't
Is it
seem like that
like
just from the trailers. Yeah, it
you're
seems like
running
they
around
were actually
screaming
doing
at-
some really cool Easter eggs, from what I could tell.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But either way, it put me off a little bit. I do want to see it just solely because I've seen the first one. That's pretty much it. But I don't like where they're going with it. I just think when I think of Ralph, I think video games. I think they should have just stuck with that. I assume they are still doing that, but more introducing more internet stuff, I guess. Obviously, but well, it's had fairly mixed reviews. It seems it's disappointed a lot of people, from what I can tell.
Are you guys still gonna go see it?
Honestly, me,
Probably probably not in the cinema. No, I'll probably wait for it to become available for other things.
Okay.
It's not exactly on my list.
That's fair.
like it's one of those things where, like, you know, the moment I see the trailer, I'm like, I'm really not interested in it. Like, there's quite a few games that had, you know, like big releases and stuff, or like or movies, like the new live action Lion King that's coming out. I have really almost no interest in seeing it. Like, I would see it just, you know, for the sheer spectacle, like just for the
Yeah.
Sure.
for like the way it looks, just to want to see it, you know.
That's fair.
But
So is it?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's tough, you know, deciding what movies you want to go see. But this is not a movie podcast, by Joe.
Yeah.
My God, we got to talk about video games.
Yes.
So speaking of video games, let's talk about a TV series. So Blake J. Harrison's famous book, The Console Wars, which itself has also received mixed reviews, is becoming a TV series. Now, I'm interested with this because I'm not too interested in reading the book.
Is it like Star Wars but with consoles?
No, not quite. It's
Although that's your
Star Wars.
No, it basically documents, although some say it over dramatizes, the clash between Sega and Nintendo in the mid '90s, well, early '90s. So back when the Super Nintendo was starting to get a bit stale, and Sega were coming along with Sonic, and were really, for the first time for a very long time, Nintendo didn't have any challenges. They took over from Atari pretty much, or rather they filled the void that Atari left when they completely bombed, and learned from Atari, learned a lot from Atari, and ran with it, and became the biggest company, one of the biggest companies in the world, certainly the biggest video game company in the world. And then Sega came along, and then it got to the point where Sega and Nintendo were literally having digs at each other. We all know the famous Sega does what Nintendo don't stuff.
I remember that,
A lot of commercials were saying things like, basically, Sega in their commercials were basically going screw Nintendo, and Nintendo in their commercials were going screw Sega. It was almost becoming a bit personal, and there was almost a kind of genuine rivalry rather than a business, rather than just typical business tactics. They were genuinely going against each other. They were really locking horns. So the book documents that, and it's going to be turned into a TV series, which I am far more interested in. It hasn't really got any legs yet because the pilot hasn't been made. The series pilot will be directed by Jordan Roberts, which is interesting because he's actually the slated director for the Metal Gear Solid movie, which is apparently in development, but it's been kept so under wraps.
I'm wondering where they're going to take
this. Much about it.
I'm wondering where they're going to take this. I mean, I guess it would be interesting to see, like, okay, who was the president of Nintendo of America before Reggie Fils-Aimé? Do you know what's his name?
I want to say it wasn't Satoru. It wasn't Satoru. It was No, Satoru. Yes, Satoru. Oh God, it begins with F. I think his surname begins with F. I think he was the
Furukawa?
son-in-law of the
No.
original.
No, yeah, I know what you're talking about. That's the president of Nintendo in Japan, but well, I guess.
Oh, anyway.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm just wondering what kind of angle they're gonna take with this. Maybe.
Well, I think it's going to be a drama.
Yeah, I guess.
And I think I don't think it's going to be a documentary series.
Right.
I think the drama would be interesting, but I just hope they don't get too melodramatic about it. I want to see a kind of almost House of Cards kind of grittiness in a way. Obviously, they're not going to go to that like those great lengths, but I mean, I want them to take it seriously at least.
Well, like if you look at like Disney and like how they made that one Disney movie that had Walt Disney overtaking the rights. Well, like he took over rights from someone. I don't remember like the whole thing, but they made a movie about it, like how Disney, kind of came to be, like how through like sheer force and determination, like he was able to acquire like so much. I have a feeling like it would kind of be like that, like you see like the Jobs movie.
Right.
How he, came into power. I think it would probably be more along the lines of that, opposed to like just okay, well, we're gonna, take over this company. We're gonna grab that. We're gonna sue this, do that.
Yeah, I get you.
I could definitely see the concept
Go on,
there. I think it has a lot of promise. I just I don't know. I guess there's not really a template set up so far because we haven't really seen these kind of video game documentary dramas before. So maybe this will be like the start of something. I'm not sure. I also want to know. I want to know. They might actually touch on like the whole deal where they were supposed to. They were originally supposed to do a deal with Sony, but ended up going with Philips. I wonder if that's going to play into it somehow as well.
Because that began not long after the Super NES was starting to wane, when 64 was around the corner and stuff like that. So and Sega and Nintendo were still going head to head, even in the Saturn days. So I imagine they will cover that, hopefully.
Well, the question is though, like, where is it gonna end? Like, is it gonna end like at the GameCube and the Wii, or is it gonna go all the way to the Switch, where it's like, okay, yeah, we made a comeback from the Wii U, and now here's the Switch.
I bet that's gonna be the epilogue. I guess that's
what they will do.
Cuts to modern day.
Sorry. Yeah, on the Nintendo timeline, I think all they're going to do is they probably won't go any. Actually, I don't think they'll go very far at all. I don't think they'll go anywhere near the N64 era. I think it will just be focused on generally the era around when Sonic became, because that's when it really peaked.
Right.
And then after that, then they were in constant battle. So
it's like,
I think they're going to look at it from the probably from the not the people at the top, but probably the lower level staff, thinking of ways to market their products. Thinking of ways to develop new games that will outshine Nintendo and stuff like that, and vice versa. It'll be interesting to see if they will keep it balanced, if they will keep it impartial, because obviously this thing they can go either way here. They can go on Nintendo side and make Sega look like the villains. So are they going to therefore have tangent storylines where they not tangent? Two
storylines, you mean?
Not quite. No, I completely muddled my words. What I meant to say was basically the dual timelines where they'll follow one character that works for Nintendo and one character that works for Sega, or something like that. Because the book, they say it's over dramatized, but it's not a drama. It's non-fiction.
Well, like if you look at it though, like from like an open standpoint, like from an audience standpoint, right? It makes sense like to have them both at odds with just like through the course of the movie. Because like you have one where their hardware is actually better than their opponents, right? Which is Sega, Sega Mega Drive or whatnot. And then you have the like the Nintendo console, right? Then it's just like the Nintendo obviously had a better IP, right? They had a better a game, if you will. They had the Super Mario Brothers, and then it basically jumped to 3, because like 2 wasn't really that good, well received, but then 3 like really kicked off Nintendo. Whereas Sonic never really like, it felt like he didn't really go anywhere,
I
like
would
away
do
from the Genesis.
Yeah, I would do a hard disagree on both those points. Super Mario Brothers is basically what sold the entire NES and rebooted the entire video game industry after the crash. Mario 1.
No, that's what I meant. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then Sonic is the one thing. Actually, the Genesis had been out a couple years before the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
Sonic is the one mascot that brought Sega back into the limelight in the first place and caused them to skyrocket in popularity. Without Sonic, you don't get really a war between Sega and Nintendo. So Sonic.
Well, I mean, like,
important.
one had better hardware though, while the other one like had the more like popular
Sure. Well,
I want to say like mascot.
The better, the more popular mascot.
The better game, yeah.
Well, the better games in hindsight for sure. At the time, I don't know.
Yeah.
At the time, probably that you wouldn't be able to really tell. But yeah, I see. As for the series itself, I see this going probably one of two directions. Either, and I don't think either of them is going to end well. I think either they're going to stay as close to the books as possible, get as nerdy with like the telling of the rivalry between Nintendo and Sega. But as a result, they're probably not going to get the biggest budget or the greatest actors, and it's probably going to end up being a flop. Or, on the other end of the spectrum, they might go overboard and go for this massive budget documentary drama with these great actors, but it's not going to end up being that historically accurate. And I don't know which one I want.
That's actually, you just suddenly made me think. Yeah, I just suddenly thought like I might spend this entire show sort of going like that didn't happen.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
I want a literal console war though, right? A literal battle like between.
That would be great. That would be.
Like I will force my gunslinger.
That's great.
Yeah, they could literally like kind of go down the road like completely over dramatize everything by saying like on Nintendo we're doing like crazy things. They're like firebombing Sega's headquarters and doing stuff like that. They go like really crazy with it, and like we have a double agent on the inside of Sega. He's gonna bring them down from the inside and stuff like that. They could like they could really go crazy with it. But obviously,
that would be awesome. I would love it. I hope they do.
Wow.
But it's not going to be a docudrama because if they got Jordan Vogt Roberts on there, I'm thinking because he did the Kong Skull Island movie.
Oh right.
So
okay.
I don't think it's going to be a documentary drama. I think it's going to be a straight up drama. But we don't know much about it now. We know that Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg will produce. I don't know what that says. And I forget who Seth Rogen is.
A little too early to call things, I think, at the end of the day. So
yeah, we'll keep an eye on it and obviously we'll report back on it. The more we know.
For sure.
Cool, guys. All right, so I could talk about that sort of that's my era of video games, and I could talk about that for weeks. So before we do that, though, that'll be an interesting focus for a future episode.
Sure.
For the rivalry between Nintendo and Sega. Yeah,
I will gladly join for that.
The whole storyline would be great.
I would gladly join for that.
That will
sure.
Excellent. I'll put you down in my book here. Alright, so guys, let's move on. So, shall we see what happened on this day in video game history? We'll move on to that segment next. So, because honestly, that could be an entire episode, that topic. So, guys, coincidentally, considering our topic, have I even said my topic yet? Have we even said that?
No.
We briefly mentioned it. Yeah, we briefly.
Oh, okay, good. Right, because otherwise this wouldn't have made much sense. I'll edit this out. So yes, guys. So coincidentally, as we're recording this episode, Resident Evil's director's cut of the first game was released in Europe for the PS1 on this very day. I normally have the amount of years it was ago. It should have been 1997, I believe. Either way, on this day, I want to say it was 21 years ago, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, so what's interesting about the Resident Evil director's cut is it is, of course, just that. It's a director's cut. It's the same game again, but beefed up with more adult content. Not adult content. That sounds like pornography. More violence, more 18 rated stuff. You know.
with the stuff that was originally cut out of the base game of the original game due to like different things.
Yeah, so the director's cut release of Resident Evil was supposed to have the original uncut intro in color as well. I think it was in black and white in the no original version, and the intro and the uncut version of the scene where you first encounter a zombie were to be put back into it, and there's a scene involving a hand that's attached to a gun that's been dismembered, and in the original take they cut away before you see the cut on the arm. You see the gore, and I think that's the incident they're referring to. There was also a sequence involving a dog, if I recall. I want to say chewing on someone's face. I can't recall exactly. Anyway. However, when the scenes were being approved for release, there was a problem with the copyright, and instead of removing the offending article, the new cutscenes were rejected completely. And the old cutscenes, the old censored cutscenes, there's even a sequence that was cut out where I think Chris lights up a cigarette. They cut that out. God, I hate that stuff. It's not like a kid's going to see that and go run down the shop and buy a pack of Marlboro. It's not going to happen. If the kid's been educated, if the kid's been educated, the kid knows it's not healthy to smoke. I smoke, but I don't go promoting it because I know it's not healthy.
We coined the term "4 kids," so they 4 kids it. You know, like you know, with the Pokemon,
yeah. Oh, it's a verb now. I like that. That's a good verb.
Yeah, it's a verb. Yeah, you 4 kids it.
So by the time Capcom of US branch of Capcom noticed the error, the director's cut was on its way to stores, complete with the cover art that specifically advertised the uncut scenes, but they made absolutely no attempt to rectify or replace them or offer any sort of not compensation, a refund, or bring in your dodgy copy and we'll give you the legit copy or something like that. So yeah, the director's cuts copies that are generally out there for the most part, well, for all of them actually, they're not actually the director's cut.
So is this the definitive?
They're all the same.
So is this the definitive? Is this the definitive version of RE1? Is this how I should play it today, or? No,
you can buy any copy because they're basically the same.
Oh, really? That's
so yeah. So it's a little bit dodgy if you ask me. Frankly, I don't think it's good business at all to do that. But no one complained, I guess. No one even cared either. But still, it's a little bit. I'm not sure. The error in the first place is not the bad thing. It's the fact that they didn't rectify it, is what bothers me. They just thought, people are buying it in the droves. It's a smash hit. Who cares? People are going to believe it's a director's cut anyway because it's a fairly violent game regardless. Yeah. And let's face it, when people buy films that say director's cut, no one is going to be making a comparison. No one's going to have the original cut next to the director's cut and is making a note of what's different. And also, there was no internet back in those days, so. Well, it was, but it was emerging. So it'd be interesting to see what would happen if this was released now, because you know how people kick off about video games nowadays.
Oh yeah.
Spider-Man puddles, for example, people went crazy for that stuff. So completely misadvertised and removed content that should be there. That would be called director's cut gate or something like that. It will be people would be debating about it and forums would explode because
David, are you saying that gamers are entitled? Is that what you're telling me? You're telling me that gamers feel entitled 100% of the time? Wow, this is a shocker.
Yes, I am saying that. So yeah, guys, do either of you have the Resident Evil director's cut? Or?
I can't say I do. Unfortunately.
I do. I played it, and yeah, the game's awesome. Like,
it's great.
Yeah, like I don't know, like I'd probably say like I've had it probably since release or somewhere around there. And yeah, like every iteration after that was. Because that's what got me into like the horror genre in the first place, like, in terms of video games, was that game.
That's very interesting. I'm just suddenly trying to think what my first horror game was. Probably. I'm gonna have to give that some thought actually. It probably was Resident Evil 2 actually, but I'm not sure.
You two are old.
Yeah. Well, let's
You know,
not
go to hell.
Let's not get into that.
I'm probably like, well, 1.5 times your age, right, guys? You're about 20, 21, I bet, 22, maybe 18, perhaps even.
Yeah, I am 18. Yes, that's right.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yes. I am 18 as well.
Oh my God, guys, I am almost twice your age.
Good
Oh,
lord.
bonkers. Yeah, okay, calm down. It's not that bad.
No, it's not. It's
Good
really
lord.
not.
I remember when I was a kid, I would look at like people in their 20s and go like, God, that's old. They're old,
It is.
you know. And then when I was in my 20s, I would look at the people in my 30s, in their 30s, going like, oh, that's, or 40s, you know, that's old. So now that I'm 35 and kids would look at me like I'm old. I don't feel old, but yet my perception of what is old is getting higher and higher. I don't know if that's just me being realistic, or whether I'm just denying that I'm getting older or something. I'm like, now that I'm 35, I'm like, 17, 18, now that's when you get old.
Well, I grew up around Contra. The original Super Mario Brothers and 3, and
What?
and the
Before
old
you were born?
DuckTales and Aladdin.
It's cool.
No, I'm 32, by the way.
Oh.
I'm actually 32.
Oh, you really? Oh, right, okay. Oh, right. I think okay, right.
Didn't
So,
weren't like pterodactyls still around back then? Whenever like Mario 3 and Contra came
Yes.
out. Okay, all right. I've heard about those things.
We had
yes, we had to rewind our
Raptors.
movies.
Jurassic Park. No,
We
I
had
had a
to,
rewinder. Okay, I had a video rewinder.
Holy cow!
Yeah, those were things, weren't they? I had no idea those were
Yeah.
things.
They were.
Devices
We still have it.
purposely designed to just rewind tapes.
Yeah.
Wow,
That's what they were for.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
yeah.
Crazy. What
We
old
still
I
have
feel
it
like that
too, by the
wasn't.
way.
Because I feel like that wasn't a thing in the UK. I don't think I ever saw one. VHS players were all over the place, but I don't think we ever saw actual rewinding devices. It seems a bit pointless.
Because you see, you guys had to. You guys, you didn't know what you were missing, right? You guys had to get up to rewind your tapes.
Oh man. Oh. See, I remember when DVDs came out, and I thought like VHS is past it now, and this is the future. Now DVDs are old hat. I can't even. To me, it feels odd. Even though I'm a retro gamer,
I would
it's strange
argue
to say this coming from a retro gamer's point of view. It's a bit strange, but I can't fathom the idea now of getting up and selecting a movie and then placing it in a device and then turning it on, then pressing play. And it seems like there's way too many steps to that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Because we have this on-demand culture these days. Video games are going that way as well. And I'm staying right now on my TV. I'm looking at Netflix, and it's all there at virtually a press of a button. But now the idea of there being extra steps. Eventually, we'll have a system where we can just select things with our eyes, and like, even pressing a button on a remote control is going to seem like
that already happens with VR basically. Like, you have these new things coming out too that I guess like they fit like this sort of like skull cap, so like your brainwaves actually control the movement of the.
They are
that
technology that's
PC,
to help people who have lost their arms or lost their eyesight or something like that.
Well, besides that, it's like it's just used for anybody really.
Yeah, it's just that technology.
But like I would say like physical media is probably not gonna die anytime soon. Especially because you've got people. Well, I mean, you still got people like in the so like in like the. I want to say like the Midwest, so like people who aren't really around like the internet, you know, like they have like they're dead spots in the U.S., you know, so they're not really gonna have ready internet available to them. So I doubt it's gonna die like anytime soon, if at all.
Sure.
Here's my theory. I think physical media seems old hat now, but it will be around for a lot longer than I expect, because there will always be a retro culture. There will always be people who are interested in DVDs and VHS. So DVDs will be, and Blu-rays even, will still be made, and collectors will still collect them. It's only when the idea of on-demand content seems really, really old, or at least it was like the era we're in now, say like 60 or 70 years from now, when when people are going to look at things like Netflix and the early iterations of things like Netflix and Amazon Prime or whatever, they're going to look at that and go like, look at what it was like back then. When we get to that time, that's when physical media will probably die. But they will always be collectors. They will always be collectors.
And they'll be collecting things like
they're alive.
And they'll be collecting things like Resident Evil Director's Cut, which came out years ago.
And you know why there will also be collectors too, because of the fact that that as we get older, right? Like a lot of these older games are not going to become available in an official format, you know. Sometimes it might be difficult to find one just by the click of a button. So like people are gonna probably hold on to their old DVDs and cartridges and whatnot. Just because and then they'll pass it on, you know, just because well, what happened? Like they're not available online. You can't find them because nobody's uploading them anymore, you know.
Just think, guys. Eventually, there's going to be something called a PS4 Mini.
Holy cow!
Yeah, right?
That's a good point.
That's going to happen at some point.
But all it will have on there is it'll just have like board games or something like that, right? It'll be like, oh no, we're not giving you anything this time.
How on earth
they'll
am I
learn
gonna
the lesson? Most of the games will become considered abandonware or something like that, and they'll learn the lesson, and they'll have like 200 games on there or something like that.
I don't know how on earth I'm gonna play. I don't know how on earth I'm gonna play on a Nintendo Switch Mini. That sounds like a nightmare to me. I don't want to make the Nintendo Switch.
Oh yeah, like the size. It'll be the size of a Game Micro.
That's pretty crazy.
It's like, what happened? Oh shit. It's easier to play.
Well, I like speculating about the future.
Yeah. So I think we should move on to our main topic now, guys.
I agree.
Because before we overrun like we almost always do, video games. You know, I could talk about them for hours. I literally could. Okay, so our main topic of discussion is, of course, Resident Evil 4, and one of my favorite games of all time, and a super pleasant surprise when I first played this game. So, Ethan, do you want to give us a bit of a grasp of the story and tell us what Resident Evil 4 is about?
Sure. Yeah. Well, Resident Evil 4, which I guess we'll talk about the development of the game in a little bit, but Resident Evil 4, it follows the events 6 years after Resident Evil 2 specifically. I'm not super up to date on my Resident Evil terminology or lore, but when does Resident Evil 3 take place? I was curious about that one. Does that tie into this?
It's before. It's right before. I think it's like right before.
It's the same time. It's the same time as Resident Evil 2.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I got you.
Yeah, they just destroyed the like a Raccoon City or whatever with a missile, and then you go into this one.
Gotcha. Okay, so Resident Evil 4 takes place after both Resident Evil 2 and 3, 6 years afterwards. Leon Kennedy, obviously the main protagonist of RE2, he's a former police cop, and he's sent to a village in the middle of Spain. It's an unnamed village to rescue the U.S. president's daughter, Ashley Graham. The thing is, while he's there, he discovers that the entire village has been affected by a parasite called Las Plagas, which I looked up. That translates from Spanish to English as the pests, which I think is pretty cool.
Are those the plagues?
No, it's the pests. Yeah, look it up.
I think there's probably multiple interpretations to it.
Probably. Yeah, I guess. So yeah, it's a mind controlling parasitic infection. The mind control victims of the parasite, they all tried to attack Leon as he makes his way through the village to try and rescue Ashley. Throughout the course of the game, Leon eventually finds Ashley, loses her. He finds her again, he loses her again, and so on and so forth.
Of course.
As they desperately try to escape the clutches of Osmond Sadler, who is the creator and manipulator of the parasite. He's also the leader of the cult in this unnamed rural village called Los Iluminados, which translates to the Enlightened Ones. At a certain point,
so pretentious. The Enlightened Ones, kill yourself.
What they are, that's the cult.
Eventually, we find out that Osmond's ultimate plan is to use Ashley Graham, who's, like I said, the president's daughter, to manipulate the American government. Which, okay, I don't know how that would work, but he has a plan.
I can probably fill in. Oh, you're gonna go into that? Cause I can tell you what the plan is.
Okay, tell me what the plan is. What's his deal?
Well, it's a bit not convoluted. It's just probably wouldn't happen. So what he wants to do, he's basically intentionally kidnaps Ashley Graham with the intention of allowing her to be allowing her to be rescued. And what he will do is he will infect Ashley with the Las Plagas, so he can control her. And then when Ashley Graham goes back to the White House, back home, he will then control her to infect the president with the Las Plagas. And then you'll have control over, because Sadler basically has control over the parasites, basically. And that's basically the plan. World domination, of course.
Somehow, I still doubt that that's feasible. But he's got it. He's got his life planned out. So I'll give him that. At a certain, that's more than I can say.
I think it's doable. It's just how effective will it be? I mean,
sure.
Great. Like the president's turn. They just
also it kind of implies that the president of the U.S. is the one person that can change everything, that can actually make all the decisions and take over the world.
That's a good point. Yeah,
which is obviously a very
it is a very bad interpretation of what
the president is.
Yeah, sure.
The president's a figure out of a team of people. Is not like the one person who can make all the decisions. It's a whole committee.
Well, regardless,
that's just what the president wants to.
Sure.
Do.
Well,
that's what he thinks he can do before he gets in there.
That's regardless of the logistics and politics of everything. At a certain point, both Ashley and Leon are captured and infected by Las Plagas, the parasite, and that causes them both to have nightmares and zombie fits. So that's another thing.
I love the accent, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I do my best. Authenticity, right?
Nearly it.
So that's the thing they got to fix too.
Yeah.
So yeah, spoiler alert, eventually, after murdering hundreds of zombies, Leon and Ashley eventually cure their infection, they kill Osmond, and escape the island on a jet ski. And all is right with the world. Now, I wrote down here as a note, frankly, Resident Evil 4 doesn't really take its own plot too seriously. There are quite a few stereotypical villains. I wouldn't say that Osmond is really the most interesting character. There's a lot of obvious plot twists, cheesy one-liners, and overall, I think the voice acting is pretty mediocre. At least it is. At least it is in English. I don't know what the Japanese translation is like.
Yeah, it's very. The whole thing is very quick.
It's very campy.
Fairly cliche.
Yeah, it's pretty cliche.
Yeah, campy is a good word. Campy is a good word.
Well, I remember was it towards the
We'll talk about the end a little bit later.
Yeah, well, I mean, it just felt okay, you got the horror, and then all of a sudden you get to the action, and then that's kind of where they take it with Resident Evil 5. It's full action.
Sure. Well, we'll touch on that a little bit later, I think. But yeah. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think summary aside, I think the RE4's mechanics and gameplay are what it's really known for. So that's what I'm assuming we're probably mostly going to be talking about is not as much the story as the gameplay. So. Anyway, that's the basic synopsis of Resident Evil 4.
Cool. So let's go into a little bit of development and history then. So I have a lot on this, guys.
I noticed.
But I can get to it real quick. Alright, so development of Resi began in the late 90s. It was around about the same time of Resi 3. And in all this time, multiple games were made, while this was being made in the background. First-person shooter Resident Evil Survivor and its sequel, which are interesting topics on their own. The remake of the original Resident Evil Outbreak and its sequel, prequel Resident Evil 0, and the handheld game Resident Evil Gaiden. So yeah, this is all it was being made all this time behind the scenes, but it was just such a protracted development. And in this time, you had a total of 4 scrapped versions. Now, it was originally intended for the PlayStation 2, and the first of these builds was directed by Hideki Kamiya, who is a fairly famous name. Many of the staff that worked on Resi 2 remained, such as Noboru Sugimura, who wrote the scenario for Resi 2. So I think that's how Resi 4 for me still manages to maintain some of the horror. I don't know who wrote the scenario for Resi 5, but I feel like he helped maintain that horror. So for Resi 4, Sugimura penned a scenario centered around a protagonist named Tony, Not the most fascinating name, I'll be honest. Sorry to any Tony listeners, but that's what he was called. And I think the idea was to make him seem like a bit of an everyman. But the truth was, he actually had he was a man of super intelligence, incredible skills, and generally he would greatly surpass any normal human being in terms of physical capability and mental faculties and all that. He was also completely invincible. So he was like a perfect person, really. You couldn't outsmart him, you couldn't outfight him, you just couldn't kill him at all.
Like the Terminator.
Basically,
Sure.
I wonder if lava would kill him. Anyway, so the Resi 2 director Hideki Kamiya wanted a change from the usual fixed camera angle that the series is known for, and he felt that such a camera angle did not fit an action-focused video game. So they wanted to go down that action road instead, so they opted for a more dynamic camera system, and so the influential over-the-shoulder third-person view was created.
Yep.
Now, during development, the team would travel the world, basically, mostly into Europe, locations such as the United Kingdom and Spain. And Europe is full of very Gothic architectured buildings, beautiful buildings. UK's got a lot of castles, a lot of traditional buildings that are several hundred years old that are still standing today. So they use that as a lot of influence for the textures and the general level design and stuff like that. Excuse me. And so they captured all these images of Gothic architecture and brickwork. So eventually, director Kamiya felt that what he and the team had planned so far strayed too far from the core themes of the Resident Evil series. And despite the efforts of the team to make it work, Kamiya just simply convinced them to use these assets and all this Gothic imagery into a game series independent of Resident Evil. The original scenario written by Sugimura remained largely identical. Kamiya then rewrote it into a story set in a world of demons. He then changed the story's characters' names, including that of the protagonist, which he changed from Tony to Dante. And of course, many know Dante as the protagonist, perhaps anti-hero of the Devil May Cry series.
Yes, sir.
So, so that is one of the more fascinating facts about Resident Evil 4. Oh, well, I still want to cover Devil May Cry in the future. We have to cover that.
Yeah.
So after all this, and in 2001, the development began for what the Resident Evil 4 we know now is. The development began for what we now know as Resident Evil 4. Within a year, the game was nearly half done. And then it was announced to be a GameCube exclusive.
That lasted.
And still this version would go into several revisions before it was released. The version designed in 2001 featured Leon infiltrating Umbrella's European headquarters, and featured zombies instead of Las Plagas infected villagers, and the scenario for this version was again written by Sugimura. Now, at some point during the story, Leon becomes infected by the progenitor virus, the basis of the original T-virus. And the progenitor virus was originally planned to be introduced in Resi 4, but would later be introduced in Resi 5 rather. So Leon's infection not only would threaten his life, but also granted him mysterious power in his left hand. And it kind of reminds me of a game called Breakdown, just with the powers in the hand kind of thing. So this is... there's probably tons of examples. Probably psychokinetic abilities, I bet. So this version included some first-person elements and did not include Ashley Graham, but did star a different girl. But it was never revealed what the girl was like, or what her name was, or what her story was. She would likely have featured in escort missions, just like Ashley, really. So then finally, we go to 2003. And another unique version was revealed. Despite a desire not to drift far from the Resident Evil archetypes, it featured supernatural elements, and it was officially named Maboroshi no Biohazard 4, which translates to Phantom Biohazard 4, and of course Biohazard being the Japanese region title of the Resident Evil series. So the story even took place within the walls of a haunted building, in which Leon had contracted a bizarre disease and featured atypical enemies such as animated dolls, walking suits of armor, and in particular a hook-wielding man. This version would therefore be known as the Hookman version. And though this version would be scrapped, elements from this version would find its way into the final version, such as the quick time events, the over-the-shoulder perspective, and the laser-guided sights on the weapons. The Hookman version could well have been the final version. I mean, it was even revealed in the 2003 Electronic Entertainment Expo, or E3. By the time it was scrapped, it had a very basic story concept. Excuse me. This version was helmed by Yasuhisa Kawamura, who penned the scenario for Resident Evil 3. On that note, some people that is why I think Resident Evil 3 was a bit of a bomb, because they took staff away from that game to make them work on Resident Evil 4, and then they basically promoted one other person who had no experience whatsoever in Resident Evil to direct Resident Evil 3. So I would say that would be one of the reasons why it kind of is not really considered that great. Although I would disagree. I think Resident Evil 3 is a great game. Kawamura's intention was to create a Resident Evil game that was high in tension and much scarier. The scenario once again finds Leon infiltrating a building. However, this time it was going to be a castle owned by Umbrella Corporation founder Oswald Spencer. Which makes me wonder if Osmond Sadler is actually Oswald Spencer. Because their names are so similar. So in a lab deep below the castle, Leon discovers. So the story of this version was in a lab deep below the castle, Leon discovers a young girl, and of course, naturally being the hero, he attempts to rescue her. He also discovers a dog that, despite being a BOW or bioorganic weapon created by Umbrella, he manages to get the dog to basically accompany him and the girl as they navigate the halls of the castle. Development progressed well until costs and other hurdles resulted in the eventual scrapping of the Hookman version.
I like that idea a lot more. I like that idea.
I think the Hookman version would have been good as well.
Yeah, I agree.
It was that. I like the idea of a persistent enemy. I think that was one of the things that Resident Evil 4 did in a way. Although there were enemies that were persistent, there wasn't, as I recall, an enemy that followed you, like Nemesis, for example. Nemesis was a great addition, but it didn't really, as far as I know, such a concept didn't really reappear in such a focus.
It might have in Haunting Grounds, but I'm not really sure. Like, I bought the game, but I never really tried it out, and supposedly that's like they put the concept of the Hookman from Resident Evil 4 into that game. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'd have to look into it a bit more.
Yeah, part of me thought he might have been inspired by Clock Tower, like the Scissor Man or something like that. But I don't know. But that's basically what it would have been. There probably would have been too much comparison, I bet. You know.
Yeah.
This hook-wielding ghostly creature, and also, do we really want ghosts in Resident Evil? Next to be vampires and stuff like that, you know. Let's just keep it as it is.
Ghosts wouldn't be too bad, considering like you could just make the entire game like without the appearance of one, you know, just the illusion that there might be something. Yeah.
Or it could be up to the gamer to actually decide on whether this is actually a ghost or some sort of maybe some sort of something imagined,
poltergeist or whatever.
Yeah. Exactly.
As a big fan of Castlevania, I much prefer the kind of gothic, like classic monsters to Resident Evil zombies and stuff. So I wouldn't mind seeing ghosts in there, ghosts and vampires. But that's me.
Yeah, that would be kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well. So of course, then Resident Evil 4 crash landed, and it fell upon series creator Shinji Mikami to step in and rescue the development of this new Resident Evil game. Another version then was created, going back to the zombies in a house formula. Yet even this version was scrapped after a short time. Didn't really get off the ground. Then another version was created, and continued the original decision to reinvent the series. The majority of the development staff were tired of the same old thing after the creation of Resident Evil 0. The whole standard fixed camera, tank controls, zombies in a house, getting keys, all that stuff. They wanted to go somewhere different. So excuse me. So So it was felt that the series was in danger of becoming a bit cookie cut, and Shinji Mikami continued as director, but some staff members were still skeptical of the proposed reinvention. The goal was to switch quite simply from classic survival horror to action, while of course maintaining, or at least retaining that some of that horror aesthetic, some of that gore, some of that violence, and tension and all that. And it was this that caused most concern. So in an attempt to create a fresh Resident Evil game, Shinji Mikami wrote a story that for the first time excuse me, one second. So in an attempt to create a fresh Resident Evil game, Shinji Mikami wrote a story for the first time did not directly involve the exploits of Umbrella. He also created a new enemy, the Ganados, replacing the archetypal zombies, and redesigned Leon to look cooler and tough. Although I think he just gave him a jacket, as far as I could tell, and a haircut. Because he looks stronger. I wouldn't say he looks cool. He just looks like Leon with a jacket, right?
He looks like a Final Fantasy character if you think about it.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. Yeah, he did a bit.
Yeah,
like
a Squall. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably what they looked like they were going for. So.
Yeah, probably. So Mikami then chose to set the game story in a different location as well. So they were looking to completely rehaul everything. So rather than a typical city or a mysterious building, he went for something more rural and set the game in a rural area of a European country, which he chose to be Spain. And to replace the usual undead monster-creating virus, he continued with the use of the Las Plagas parasite. Eventually, continuing concerns surrounding the reinvention was assuaged, especially when the final released version would be regarded as not only the best game in the Resident Evil series, but one of the greatest games ever made. And that is it, guys.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. All right, we're all going home now, right?
All right, guys. Thanks for listening. See you. Bye.
No, we have thoughts. We have opinions.
I want this ride. Who cares about that? It's
so I was going to say, I appreciate that. First of all, that's a fascinating development story. I love hearing this kind of development stuff.
I couldn't overlook it. There's so much stuff, but I just couldn't overlook it. Normally, I would condense that down to a couple of paragraphs.
You got through it pretty quick.
But to be quite honest, I already wrote about Resident Evil 4, so a lot of what I just said actually came straight from that. So I was reading through what I'd written, and I thought, Joe, I'm going to keep it all. I'm just going to condense it down a little bit, so I did go into a bit more detail. And I just thought, this is a really interesting development cycle. It's a bit nuts. There was 12 versions of the thing altogether. And I liked where they almost went with it. I love the tie-in to Devil May Cry. I love that. How that sort of was a happy accident in a way and went on to be a great series in its own right. And one of my other favorites as well. So, it would be a shame to overlook so much interesting development, really. So people might be sick of my voice now, guys. So tell me your personal histories with thanks. Resident Evil. So tell me your you mean the detail, or are you talking about people being sick of my voice?
Oh no. That's not what I was saying. I kind of wanted to touch on the development a little bit too. I'm a sucker. I'm a sucker for movies like Die Hard or games like Half-Life. So I really like the idea that Resident Evil was initially supposed to take place in just a single building. You're supposed to be working your way out of it. I love those kinds of scenarios. Actually, to me, it's kind of a shame that they didn't keep that formula, because I like that idea a lot. I think it might have been a better story if they had stuck with that. But that's me anyway.
Yes, that's one of the aspects that Resident Evil 4 really ran with, was that it really felt like almost like an adventure game. Because there were so many different so many different sceneries that you visited in that game, that it really felt like, although linear, it really felt like you were on quite an adventure.
Quest? Yeah.
Because quest would be a better word. Yeah, you the village, you go into some sort of building, I can't remember. Then you go into the lake, then you go into the castle, then you go from there to an island, into a facility, then I think back to the island, I think. So you really do traverse all over the place. But then again, it's just that technology thing, isn't it? I mean, they had this new technology. How could they not go crazy with it? Look at Resident Evil Code Veronica, for example. Some people think that game's too long, but I just think they really just went crazy with it and just thought, we got all this processing power and all this space, guys. Let's take something like Resi 2 and make it huge. And it is a bit overlong, in my opinion. But anyway, no, we're not talking about that. So, guys, what are your personal histories with Resident Evil 4? Do you remember when you first played it at all, JT? John?
When I first played it, I enjoyed like the concept, and I was like, okay, great. I bought it upon release. Got home, played it a bit, and was just like the controls were a bit off-putting for me. Cause
really,
it just felt, I don't know, cause you could only really change from inverted to not. There was only 2 options for controls. And I don't know, I really couldn't get past the control scheme. That's probably why I took more of a liking to RE5 than I did to 4. I didn't like the RE5's action, so much, because it felt like, okay, well, you could just go through and that's it. You don't feel anything for it. Whereas RE4, you did feel a bit of something throughout at least the first half. But then the fact that it was such janky controls, in my opinion. For me, for my playstyle. That was just kind of the whole thing that kind of made it so it was really difficult to get through at least the beginning, the first couple of chapters of the game. But it was good though, decent enough for me to be all right. I'm thinking about getting the collection later on, which was the bundle of 4, 5, and 6 for the PSN.
Compilation games.
Yeah.
No offense.
Yeah, but I bought
it.
I bought it, except for 6. I didn't really enjoy. Even though it has that co-op feel to it, it's still 6 is forgettable.
I think most people feel that way.
But I probably feel that if they use the RE5 controls for RE4, then I would have stuck with the game all the way throughout. I wouldn't I just wouldn't because I don't know. I quit halfway through, and I was I can't do this. This is just. I still couldn't get used to controls. Yeah, for RE4, I still couldn't get used to the controls. Huh? No, I didn't finish it.
Oh wow!
Wow! Yeah. Get off my podcast.
Thoughts on that?
Get off the podcast.
I already told you I didn't finish it.
Wow! I know you did, but I didn't realize you had dumped it pretty much. I knew you hadn't played all the way through. Or at least I think you did.
I haven't abandoned it. It's just okay, now it's got updated controls because it switched. Once it made the jump to HD on the PS3 and whatnot, I picked it up again. I'm all right, these controls are they're a lot better.
Well, we'll touch on that a bit later. Then I think I'll give you. That's surprising. Ethan, what about your personal history? I mean, do you remember when you first played it and what you thought? And because obviously we're talking about a game that really kind of overhauled everything, so
sure.
Be interested to see what you think as well.
We'll see. A long time ago.
What your first?
A long time ago.
I'm trying to remember mine, to be honest. Very big memories.
A long time ago, in about October of this year, I decided.
Oh really?
Yeah, it really wasn't that long ago that I first started to play it. Yeah, but I mean, I didn't. I was just playing it out of curiosity because I'd collected it up at the Steam Summer Sale that was up earlier this year, and decided to give it a go. I appreciate that. I think
Steam,
that.
is it?
I think we. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. I don't use keyboard and mouse because I prefer to play it the way that they originally intended. Yeah. But regardless. I appreciate that. I think we seem to have the full gambit of opinions here because David, you're a really big fan of RE4. JT, you aren't so much. I think I'm somewhere in the middle. I don't actively dislike it or anything like that, and I would even say, yeah, it's an enjoyable game.
I don't dislike it. I just didn't really like the controls.
Oh sure.
with the updated controls, like I enjoyed it a lot more.
Sure.
And I, I love the opening cutscene. Like it was amazing.
This is my opinion, sir. Get off my opinion podcast.
You know what? No, I will get on your opinion. Like Donkey Kong, bro.
Get out of here. No, I would even say my opinion of it is a little higher than that. Like I like the controls. I think they definitely work. I don't dislike them, definitely. I find it, people seem to praise this game quite a bit, and I find it, I try to understand why, because it doesn't seem like there's much that sets it apart, in my opinion. And I understand.
Overrated, huh?
I would say that. I don't like using that word because it's kind of overused, but I find it, I guess it's probably like the cultural significance at the time because of the third person view that became so prominent.
Yeah.
Like after, before RE4, you have the first Resident Evil games, you have like KOTOR. That's about as far as the extent of like third person games go. Then after this, you have games like Mass Effect or Uncharted.
Well, I think you had Dead Aim, didn't that come out before?
Dead Aim. Oh, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know about that one.
Oh.
But yeah, I think it's for me it's probably the influence of RE4 that I respect quite a bit. It's hard for me looking at it from like a modern context. It's hard for me to understand why people love this one so much, and I haven't found too much good evidence for it, I guess.
Yeah. That's something we'll definitely go into a bit more later for sure. Well, my personal history, I remember very vaguely my introduction to Resi 4. It was a random gift from my partner at the time, and it was on my radar. I wasn't super excited about it, but I was kind of off the grid a little bit as far as new games were going really back then, so I knew very little of it. So for me it was completely fresh. So I think, Ethan, I think you're a classic victim of overhype. And we touched upon this before when it comes to like Half-Life and stuff like that, and we talked about it on the FPS, the first-person shooter episode we did a while back, where I spoke to Taylor, who said he didn't really like it all that much. Half-Life, I mean now, and I said, we concluded that really it was just because it was so lauded and became considered one of the best and most influential first-person shooters ever made, and it is. It was held in too high a regard to really live up to. And I think Resi 4 was the same for yourself. However, when I started, it was fairly new. And I came to it just about the time that it was ported onto PS2, which wasn't very long after the GameCube exclusive. But actually, I think it was a while. I think it was about two years. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So yeah, it was given to me as a random gift. And naturally, I thought, Resident Evil, all right, cool. And I just remember playing it like all the time, to the point where I think it kind of bothered my partner, and it just was. I just found it so much fun. I just there's something about this when it comes to video games. I think it's the little things that really make a game hold up, and it's one of my theories of why mobile games are so popular. I won't go into too much of that, but basically I think it's little animations, little sounds, little interactions with the game that make them popular. The way things pop, the way things move, the smoothness, things like that. With Resident Evil 4, you really get a sense of how weapons impact enemies, especially when you get things like is it a Tech 9? Or a Tech 9? The first submachine gun you get, the only submachine gun you get. When you get that and you're raining hell down on your enemies, you really see the bullets impact the enemy. And not only that, you can aim. You can aim now in Resident Evil 4. So shooting an enemy in the foot and they will skip around, and you mutter something upset sounding in Spanish and carry on walking at you. Really sort of nails home that these aren't really normal people. That guy was just shot in the foot and he's coming at me again, So it really get the sense of this horde of mindless maniacs coming at you, even though you're raining all these bullets down on them. So I just remember playing it, just generally playing it was just so much fun. And on top of that, then you got you got kind of a cliche story, not much to go on there. It is campy. I definitely say campy is a good word for it. But I just remember it felt big as well, because I can't think of how many times I got to a point where I thought, this is where it's going to end. I think this is going to be the final part. Like when you get to the castle, it has a certain final stage vibe to it. You got these enemies dressed rather significantly different than the Ganados. They're dressed in their cowls. Is that the word, cowls? And the dark hoods, and there's like a little hint of red to the uniforms, if I recall. So they look the part, like a final stage enemies.
Sure, it's a really atmospheric game. I won't deny that. It nails its atmosphere. Yeah. I would also say, but it's kind of
That's the word.
The atmosphere is kind of counterbalanced by the ridiculous cliched story that I can't. Because of that, I can't take the atmosphere as seriously, to be honest.
For me, it was like the action oriented, because when it started, the action scenes, should I say, that's kind of when I really lost interest in that game. Really? I was like, I kind of went from this horror, that
was one of the most divisive things about Resi 4.
Yeah, it was like polarizing for me, so I was like, this isn't going right. No, it's going where I know it's going, like
an action movie.
I don't know.
Going from suspense to
I've watched so many movies, before then, so I kind of knew what was going on after that with all the action scenes in place.
Well, I mean, to be clear, this is far from a horror game. Like, there's no way.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
It's definitely not a horror game. I'm not discarding your point or anything. It's not a horror game, and I mean, okay. Would you consider the first Resident Evil games, were those straight up horror games, or were those more survival horror? Because there is a massive difference.
I would say so. Yeah. I would even go as far as to say Resi 4 is a horror game, but I would say
the very first one was.
Yeah. Oh, the Resident Evil, the first one was. I would. This is how I would class the first one. I would class the first one as a hammer horror game. Because it had that haunted house, not haunted, but it had that evil house kind of vibe, creepy cobwebby statues and creaking doors and all this stuff. It had that hammer horror stuff. The second one then went a bit bigger and was more. It felt like an 80s horror movie to me. Resident Evil 2. It looked a bit dated. It looked like it was set in the 90s. Set about the time it was released, I believe. Like 96, 97, or something like that, thereabouts. Anyway, but it had a certain 80s campiness to it, but it was still horror. Resident Evil 3 was definitely horror, because it had a relentless enemy chasing you, like a slasher flick, in a way. So I would definitely class that one as horror. Resident Evil 4, however, I would just straight up say is action horror. I don't think it drifted too far away from horror. I think it maintained a lot of the horror aspects, but horror doesn't necessarily mean scary when it comes to films.
Well, actually, I disagree.
It could just be an aesthetic.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's... Sorry, go ahead, JT.
I was just gonna say, in the beginning, I felt it did, kind of keep those horror aspects, it was slow, moving, it was slow rolling. You got this creepy atmosphere, type of thing, and then you would get into the the house, like the castle and stuff, and it would after that, after probably chapter 2 or 3, is when it kind of really just fell apart into just full action.
I would agree on that front.
Flick type of thing.
Well, I mean, I think it okay. Clearly, it has a horror theme. I don't think there's any denying that part. Obviously, it's got
heads explode.
Yeah, crazy freaking monsters. Yeah, horror theme. I don't think that makes it far from.
You can get decapitated just out of nowhere.
That makes it far from a horror game, though. It doesn't present it does present an atmosphere, but it doesn't present a vibe. Through the gameplay and through the mechanics, it presents a vibe of action. I would say more than anything.
Gameplay wise is action, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I think that's where I say, when I say it's action horror, I would even split that. I say the theme is horror, the game is action. But I think there's so many things that remind me of those horror films that aren't really scary, but are just a little bit over the top, a little bit gory, a little bit gross. Like for example, the sequence when you fight Torres Mendez, who's like the big very much a nod to Nemesis. Big tall dude. He's the one that actually captures Leon early in the game.
Oh right, okay. Yeah.
Clocks him in the head if I recall.
Tries to do a spider
you actually
thing,
come
right?
across a picture of him during the sequence, and he turns into this big creepy scorpion thing.
Yeah.
And then the way he splits, it's so grotesque. That's a good word, grotesque. It's not a horror game; it's grotesque at times. It's a little bit over the top. Similarly, that the Sadler fight, he basically turns into a giant arachnid of sorts.
So it's more of a gore fest, right? Gore
more
game.
of a sci-fi gore movie, maybe a game.
Yeah.
More of a sci-fi horror even. Oh god, I was going to say something else then. But either way, there's lots of like grotesque and kind of horrific imagery. But yeah, I wouldn't call it all-out horror in any way, because my definition of horror is more psychological.
Sure,
When I
that's
think
fair.
horror.
Well, yeah, we might be referring to a couple different kinds of horror in that case, because I think you don't.
Oh yeah.
When you're wandering around
Yeah.
Resident Evil 4, you might be feeling a sense of I don't know, maybe like grotesqueness, but like fright.
Yeah.
I would say that if
It's
you
like
if you're looking for a frightful game, this isn't it. I will say there's also another way in which it is kind of a suspense game. There, I will say, how do I put this? Everything moves at you so slowly, and it can gang up on you so quickly that you can be somewhat overwhelmed. And I think that it is somewhat scary in that sense of the word. Like you can. Sorry, you were gonna say something?
There is a.
No. I was gonna say like I would think that it like Resident Evil as a whole like probably hasn't become an actual horror like in itself.
Great, yeah.
Until 7 RE7 is that horror experience. Like
right.
it actually became true horror. They basically
totally
took out the zombie. Yeah. They basically took out the zombie and said like, okay, well, we'll put you in this house, right? But it's not going to be like zombies. It's going to be this incestuous family type of thing, like the cabin in the woods type of thing.
Or Texas Chainsaw, perhaps.
Texas Chainsaw, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that I
Like I said,
actually enjoyed. Like I respected that game for it, I just went. It went all out horror. It's not like survival horror so much as it's a base horror game, or even action horror.
I would even say that there's multiple times where Resident Evil 4 makes nods to all sorts of different horror, really. For example, when you go to when you first reach the village, I mentioned earlier that there's a bit of a Wicker Man vibe to it, just primarily because you're being assaulted by this crazy cult. And then when you get into the castle, there's obviously a kind of Lovecraftian kind of thing, kind of vibe. There's a lot of if you want to go to films about Satanism and things like that, the sort of like stereotypical Satanism horror movies where there's like people in cowls and sacrifice and murder and blood and gore and dismemberment and all that stuff.
Maybe like letters on the wall and stuff, right? Pentagram.
Or like a bit more of perhaps more of a Hammer horror thing where there's like lots of like dusty walls being lit up by candles, people carrying torches and all that stuff. And then of course you go later on into the island research facility, which is a bit more of an 80s sci-fi horror vibe, where things are being experimented on and there's weird machines and things that don't make sense and a strange creature you've never seen before. By the way, on that note, the regenerators surpass, in my opinion, the liquor as the greatest enemies in the Resident Evil series, because they are brilliant as far as their design point goes.
Regenerators, which are those?
When we want to, the regenerators are otherwise known as Iron Maidens, I believe, and they are the ones that you have to. Well, you can take them out with a lot of bullets, but in order to the most effective weapon is the sniper rifle with infrared view, because they have all these glands inside them.
Those are fair.
In every game, it's a sniper.
Now you can't tell me that sequence. I mean, the whole game may not be, but the sequence with when you first meet. And I mentioned I referenced this. If you remember, John, I referenced this during our horror game episode, where it was one of my favorite moments is when you first encounter the regenerators, and it just sort of appears there. I won't go into too much detail into that, but what I like about them and why I genuinely think they're horrific, they're genuine horror game, they're a genuine horror game character, is that there's a lot of elements to them that make them right. For example, not only are they grotesque to look at, they have a kind of a walk as well, a kind of loose, lethargic kind of waddle that's very inhuman. So to look at, you immediately get a kind of repulsion from them. They also make a noise, which is very indistinct. You can't really tell exactly where they are, but you can tell when they're getting closer because the noise they make gets louder. The noise they make is also incredibly throaty and creepy and weird, kind of like a stalker on the phone kind of noise in a way, where it's kind of like heavy breathing and a little bit sounds like they're trying to say something, but they're not really. It's just sort of like heavy breathing and weird. Sounds like they're struggling to breathe, actually.
And then some of them will let out like the static electricity or these needles or whatever these points that come out like
some
hedgehog.
of them will grab you at times when you don't expect it to, and when they bite you, the visuals for when they bite you is horrible because their mouth opens up huge, they sink their teeth into your neck, and the whole thing is loud and in your face and very visceral. And not only that, they're hard to take down because they're so far when you have to take them off from a distance, so there's that tension there. You're trying to shoot them in the right points, but because they have this waddle, you can't really shoot them. You can shoot them effectively, of course, but it's quite hard. So they have that tension, of course, because you're zoomed in as well. The moment you zoom out, they're suddenly closer than you thought they were. So there's that wonderful sort of surprise horror when you're like, oh god, he's right there. He's actually about 10 feet away. He could grab me any second and put me onto his spikes or whatever. So yeah, it drifts for me now that I think about it more. It goes from genuine horror to kind of campy sci-fi horror to not horror at all, to more action horror, to action movie stuff. I think Resident Evil 4 in too many great horror movies.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Or scenes in many great horror movies, like the sequence when you in a house and you got the Legonados coming from all corners, and you're running upstairs, you're pushing down ladders, they're coming through the windows, you're kicking them back out, and stuff like that, and they're kind of besieging you when you're trapped in this house. There are probably several scenes in movies where that has happened.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, and again with the island, I can't think of an example, but there's lots of horror movies where like you find like experimentation going on and grossness and blood on, blood-stained surgical tables and all this stuff. So I think that's why it's probably cliche, because it's very much based on Western horror movies and action movies, all bundled into one.
That's a real good point. I agree.
So I'm waffling, guys.
Well, I think we talked enough. We touched enough on the theme. You want to talk about the actual the mechanics and the upgrade system and all that?
Yeah. Yeah. So they completely overhauled the gameplay with previous iterations of Resident Evil. People say it got rid of the tank controls. It didn't.
No.
It still has the tank controls, although the controls are a little bit more smoother. The tank controls themselves are a little bit smoother. Moving forward and turning left and right while you're moving forward is a little bit smoother. Whereas in Resident Evil 2 and before, or Resident Evil 3 and before, you turned a little bit more sharply. So it was a bit more, I guess, unrealistic. But anyway, the tank controls were still there. They changed the perspective. And because you had that behind the camera kind of control, tank controls are suddenly a lot easier, suddenly a lot, for me anyway, suddenly a lot easier to deal with. Now, I didn't have a problem with the controls, but John, you understand that you did, right?
Yeah. It just frustrated, like, I don't know, like, I was already not a big fan of the original Resident Evil controls themselves. And this one right here, I felt like, yeah, like this one, well, because after Resident Evil, right, I was playing a lot of JRPGs, and some of them were action-oriented RPGs. So the controls were a lot different, they were a lot more smoother and clean cut. Like they were a lot more as to what they are right now, in its current state, depending upon the game. so I went from like having like smooth controls like in really good controls like in SOCOM and other games of that nature on the PS2 to Resident Evil 4, and I never really, I was never really able to get into that mindset of having just like controls like that. I don't know. It was like you had one button to aim, and then you had to shoot, and then you were standing still while shooting. You were standing still while knifing.
I'll come to the defense here. I'll come to the defense here on this one. I think that's clearly intentional. If you can't really get into the mindset, then definitely, it's hard to appreciate it. But everything in this game is made to work very, very slowly. Like every boss, every enemy, everything is coming at you at a very slow, methodical pace, and that's on purpose. And the controls are supposed to make you feel limited. Like you're supposed to be moving slow and supposed to be turning slowly, stopping to a halt.
Well, it wasn't like the movements or like the turning or whatnot or the aiming. The aiming was really good, in my opinion, a lot better with the over-the-shoulder controls. Yeah, but it was like just like the buttons.
Also, the aiming had added a bit of tension as well, because sometimes that headshot was really required.
Like the aiming was good. Like I liked it.
Yeah,
But,
and again, it added to the whole the whole horror of the enemies, where you shoot them in the face, and they act like you just poked them in the eye, and they still come at you.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Brilliant. And they're literally like, and they hold their face, and then they go like, they carry on, and they're bleeding from the eye and stuff like that. So it helped add to that.
But then you also like in order to turn around, you kind of like had to stand still and like move your body. Like it was really weird.
It's unnatural. I'll give you that. But I think I'm going to go with what you think. Yeah, well, I'm going to, because naturally, if you're coming out, if you have a weapon and hordes are coming at you, you're going to take gradual steps back. Of course you are.
Yeah.
But I think it just required you to run away a little bit further, and you had to think before you turned around and got ready to pull that trigger.
Yeah.
So it adds to that overall tension. And one of the reasons why I'm particularly I'm not going to say I defend tank controls, but one of the reasons why I say they are not a terrible mechanic is because the idea of being limited is scary, especially in a horror game. Ethan's already touched upon this a little bit, where not being able to turn around quickly is horrible. Having to do like a 3-point turn when the zombies coming at you, like in Resident Evil 2, you basically have to do a 3-point turn sometimes. Having to do that is quite tense.
Well, for me, it was like more annoying than it was like tenseful. I was just like,
I can get that.
I will say, I could see that in like the long stretches. Sometimes there are long stretches between battles where it just traversing the world in and of itself is a little bit, it can be a little bit of a pain. In the heat of the,
a little daunting.
In the heat of the moment, I think it actually adds to the overall atmosphere and tone, though. I would agree there. 2 missteps I'd like to point out. The knife. Look, the deal is, anytime that I hold down on the left trigger and you're aiming forward and you have to tilt downwards in order to slice out an enemy or slice out a box or whatever it may be, that doesn't make any sense to me. I don't see why that shouldn't be a faster action. I don't see why that shouldn't be a faster action. Guns, all right, fine. That makes sense. Again, adding to the atmosphere, adding to the tone.
They improved the controls like later on with RE5, but like if they would have just fixed the controls a little bit, just tweak them a little bit more.
Well,
like with the knife, like if
I think it's
allowed you to actually run, or not run, but like walk backwards while wielding the knife, that would have been
you had the 180 turn, if I recall.
Huh? Oh, like where you could turn back, yeah.
Yeah, you tilt if you press tilt backwards on the hit, if I recall. Leon does a 180, I believe. So that was a good touch.
Another. Oh gosh, I had an idea. I had a thought. Keep talking. I'm gonna come back up with
it. So
keep talking, guys.
I don't think Resident Evil 4, or any Resident Evil for that matter, was going for realism. The mechanics were intentional.
Yeah.
Tank controls, we were never Some people literally talk about it like it was just a terrible game design. No, I think it was purely intentional.
I don't think necessarily that it was intentional. Like
obviously,
with the
look at other games.
It was.
Look at other games like.
I mean, they were improved upon from the third Resident Evil, but I'm not saying like that they were completely intentional. Like, for that game, they were just like, okay, well, we'll keep the controls.
I think it was built from the ground up, though. I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, like they, because like in the original games,
twice.
like you kind of had to aim, like you aimed right, and then you had to turn. You couldn't like, of course, walk while you were shooting, so they kept some of the controls, but I'm not sure about being completely intentional. I think it was just an oversight.
I don't know if that's fair. Yeah, I don't know if that's fair to say that the entire game mechanics and the entire system of how they built it up.
Well, not like the entire. I don't mean that. I mean just the controls, like just from the controls point of view.
Yeah, I guess. I don't think it was an oversight. I will say one thing that was an oversight. I really, really desperately wish that there was an option to swap between weapons quicker. Because going into your pause menu once every 5 seconds to go from the M2 pistol to the TL, the machine gun, to the rifle scope, it was just that.
To a grenade.
Yeah, to a freaking
to a grenade. The idea of switching to a grenade.
Yeah, that was
a bit stupid.
I appreciated.
Well, I mean, go on.
I thought that the system of having a case that you only have a certain amount of space with, I actually liked that. I thought that was smart.
I love that. That was great.
That encouraged you to be encourage you to be smart with your ammo. Encourage you to be smart. You couldn't carry every weapon in the game. Yeah, sure.
That's something I want to touch on a little bit because obviously resource management in early Resident Evil was paramount. You couldn't go carrying around too many green herbs. You couldn't go carrying around too much ammo. You had to be particularly balanced about it. It wasn't that you were like filling up your. It wasn't quite like Resident Evil 4 where you had a limited space as such. You weren't really like filling everything up, but you could store things in your chests. It was more of a case of not that's my place. And what was I going to say then? There was a kind of like you had to really think ahead in Resident Evil 2 and 3 and so on. You had to really think ahead. Is this going to require more ammo? Do I have no choice but to fight through this sequence, or should I just basically stock up on herbs? If anything, Resident Evil 2 discouraged the idea of fighting. Resident Evil 4, however, was all about the fighting. And so they created a system which was very much like a Tetris game, where you had to slot guns and ammo and grenades and other things, keys even, if I recall, into compartments in a gridded block-based attaché case. Which you could improve thanks to the merchant. You could get a bigger case. So it wasn't so much resource. There was less focus on resource management, I thought. So what I was going to ask was, do you think that kind of hurts Resident Evil? That the resource management or lack of resources was almost part of the horror in Resident Evil 2, where you were trapped in a corner but you didn't have any first aid sprays or green herbs. There wasn't very many moments like that in Resident Evil 4. You either just like straight up died or you shot your way out of it.
Well, I think that brings up an interesting point. I think there are two kinds of video games. This is going great. There are two kinds of video games. They're the ones that they're the ones that empower you, and they're the ones that limit you. And both can be absolutely incredible depending on how they're used. Like, for example, I've been playing a lot of not a retro game, not even close, but I've been playing a lot of Red Dead Redemption 2 recently, and that's a game that purposefully limits you through animations, through a near lack of any sort of fast travel. And it does all that too, specifically for the purpose of immersing you in the world, and I think that it's very, very effective at it.
Besides that too, it also has spots where you have to walk, like instead of being able to run like you normally would in the world.
point is,
like camp, some barns and stuff.
yeah, well, yeah, this isn't the Red Dead podcast. I wish it was. That'd be fun. But point is, and then you have like, you know, opposite side of the spectrum. Again, not a retro topic, but like games like Spider-Man, which came out recently, which is at its like the very definition of like an empowering game that rewards you with like these little energy bursts every time that you're swinging from building to building. Or, you know, like the entire first-person shooter genre is based off of that. Like you play Half-Life 2, and it's just these awesome moments where you're constantly being gratified for gunning a guy down or whatever.
Oh, and we touched upon that in the Half-Life episode when you get the super gravity gun.
Yeah.
And you that's empowered in a video game because you're virtually invincible, even though you're technically not. You're just a destructive force. So
yeah, it does that. It does that specifically for the purpose of empowering you. But then there are games.
I have to ask though.
Yeah.
Does Spider-Man 4 have a profanity check?
I don't know, man. That's
a profanity filter.
I don't know. That's not my point. But regardless, Resident Evil 4 is one of those games that they limit you on purpose for the purpose of an atmosphere or a gameplay mechanic that you feel powerless, you feel limited, and that's done on purpose. So to that effect, I would say the resource management is a part of that. They limit you on resources because that is something that is a mechanic in and of itself that you should be worrying about.
I would agree too. Like it's easy to look at a game for not being for being survival horror, you know, and not call it like specifically like a horror game, but like it could have both those elements too, you know. I think this one does RE4 does resource management well, like in being like, okay, well, you're limited to this like small suitcase, right, of stuff that you can hold, and then it's like, you know, and then
it almost made a game of that aspect in a way, because you kind of had to play this game of fit the shapes in the box.
Yeah, you just kind of like worry too, like later on, like, oh shoot, am I gonna need this? Am I gonna need that? You know. It's
you
like,
had to have like the most powerful weapons took up the most space a lot of the time, or at least took up significant space. So you had to really consider: do I want to be a bit more health focused, or do I want to be, you know, do I want to be safe, or do I want to be powerful? So, and it always came that time when you would be given. Oh yeah, absolutely. When you were given that opportunity to, you'd be given a weapon. So you try and pick up a weapon, but you don't have space. You have that moment then where you think, what can I discard? Or can I maybe leave this here and come back later? Because I don't think... Did Resident Evil 4 allow you to leave stuff and come back for it later?
No.
No, I think you just dropped it, and it like... You dropped it and it disappeared.
Yeah, so you had
into the void.
So you had to decide. Yeah, so you had to either you had to discard something, and you had to. So you always had these moments where you have to think. So I'm going to take back what I said actually earlier. I don't think it actually limited or changed the resource management. No, it didn't limit or it didn't make it less resource intensive or more so. It just changed it and made it actually a bit more. Well, it just made it different. Just made it a bit more realistic, I guess. Where it wasn't so much how much stuff you had, it was more the size, and will it fit in your case. So yeah, very cool. It reminds me of Minecraft in a way, that kind of with its system of chests.
Maybe.
To the point. Yeah. I mean, that's a good.
All right, guys. So so I think we've said all we can say about Resident Evil 4 really. I was thinking more like the chests with the limited squares, you know. Yeah. So as we are running out of time, guys, I think we should just basically dive into our quiz and test you guys on your Resident Evil 4 knowledge. for one time. I only really have 10 questions, and they're quite random and stupid. So bear with me, guys. So what we do here is we basically decide on who to start with. I'll ask you a question in each turn. You get a point for each, and obviously it's that straightforward. So I'm going to flip a coin here to see who I start with. Heads for Ethan, tails for you there, John.
Dude,
and we're going to start with you, Ethan. Alright guys, Ethan, you ready? You're going to know this one. This first one's very, very obvious. I realise a lot of my questions we've already talked about, so this should be easy, guys. Ethan.
Yes, sir. I'm ready.
Alrighty, your question is, in which country is set Resident Evil 4?
I think that it's Alaska. The center of Alaska. Yeah, that's it. No, it's Spain. It's definitely Spain.
Alaska, Spain.
Alaska, Spain.
So there you go. Yes, yes.
Yeah. Same
John.
thing, right? Okay.
Yeah. John, the primary enemy encountered in multiple areas of Resident Evil are the Los Granados. What does Los Granados mean?
I'm gonna say the grenades.
No.
Yeah.
It
No,
means-
I don't know.
I'm not gonna say what it is, but I can pass it over. Ethan, do you want to take it?
I have no idea. Nope, I'm lost on that.
No worries, no worries. It means the cat. It means the cattle.
The cattle.
Or the sheep,
Oh,
if you
that's,
like.
that's interesting.
The cattle.
Yeah.
Which is very obviously a name given by Sad. Right, Ethan.
Yes, sir.
What is the name of the village that the Granados and the Los Illuminados occupy?
It's unnamed. It doesn't have a name.
It is. Yes, that was my trick question. Good.
Oh, wow, I got it. What do you know?
It's never revealed what the village is called. It's just unnamed. You're 3-0 up already there, Ethan. John, you got to pull it back. And here's your question. And we've already touched upon this one as well. Leon's first appearance in Resident Evil 2 as a rookie cop took place how many years before the events of Resi 4? We've already talked about it.
I said this earlier.
as well.
Yeah, I said this earlier.
I'm gonna say 3 years.
No, Ethan, do you want to take it?
It's double that at 6 years.
Alright. 4-0. Now the next question's a bit tough, I reckon. Depends on your memory, I guess, because he's quite an insignificant character, in my opinion.
Okay.
As Leon attempts to fight the villagers, he is eventually captured and injected with the last Plagas parasite. Later, he awakes to find that he is not the only person captured, and he is in the company of a former Los Illuminados staff member, or rather a researcher named what? Full name.
It's full name? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh no.
He does mention his full name in the game, just so I can, as a disclaimer. I'm not saying, you did the wiki, you wouldn't get this, but he died. I think he does. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he does.
I'm not gonna say because I don't know, and I don't want to give JT a hint.
Okay, you can pass it, yeah? You can pass it. All right, JT. Do you want to take it? Do you want to have a guess? Do you know the name?
I have no idea.
Very much an Antonio Banderas lookalike. He's very much based on him, in my opinion.
Hey.
That's not a clue. That's not a clue.
I know I heard the name before, in the videos, but I don't remember.
Okay,
Don't
no
remember
worries.
the name. Yeah.
Let's plug along then. His name is Luis.
Lose what?
Luis Serra. Luis Serra.
Sarah? Oh my
I'm
god.
trying to do. I'm trying to do a Spanish kind of thing, and I'm doing a terrible job of trying to do a Spanish accent. But the way he says it is like Luis Serra. I can't do it. Luis Serra. Is basically.
Sarah.
All right, guys. Still 4-0 rather. Who am I on? I lost track.
JT.
It's you, JT. JT, what is the name of Sadler's vertically impaired right-hand man and castellan of the castle in which at one point Ashley is kept?
Oh god.
You know the guy. You know the guy. He's absolutely irritating.
It's very irritating.
Hello, Mr. Kennedy.
Wow, that was actually really.
I know the guy. I know the guy, but I don't remember the name.
No. All right, Ethan, you know it?
sorry.
That was a really good impression, by the way. Do that again.
I don't think I can.
You can do it again. That was really good.
Okay, I'll try.
Do it.
Hello, Mr. Kennedy.
Holy
I can't.
That's really impressive, actually. He wears the Napoleon hat. I don't quite remember what his name is.
Oh, he's very much a joke on Napoleon, definitely.
Oh yeah.
It's the whole small man syndrome thing.
The guy being chased. The statue.
Right. Yeah. Oh yeah. The massive statue that chases you at one point.
Yeah.
Straight part of the game. I don't remember the name.
Any ideas on the name? No. It's Ramon Salazar.
Oh right. Okay. Yeah.
Salazar.
Salazar.
So we're still at 4-0, guys. Still doable. Actually, we've got 5 questions left, so it's getting to the wire for you there, JT. All right. This is quite an easy one, actually. I think. And I keep losing my spot. I'm on you, and Ethan. Right,
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Ethan. This is an easy one in my opinion. This might clinch it for you. What is Leon's middle name?
S.
S.
His middle name is S.
S. Obviously.
Man. I'm gonna go like Seth.
Let's see.
No, it's not. No.
I'm gonna go. Let's see.
I'm gonna pass it to you then, Jay, because now it is your turn.
No. Yeah, I have no idea.
No?
Salazar.
Scott. That would be something, wouldn't
Scott,
it?
okay.
It's Leo Scott. Guys, I'm really surprised you didn't get that one. I thought that was one of the easiest ones on the thing.
Alright, so whose name is?
Alright, John. Your question is... This is a hard one in my opinion. Early in the game, Leon fights a giant creature in a lake near Los Illuminados. A creature known as the... oh god, I forgot what it's called actually. It'll come back to me. A creature that was exposed to the Las Plagas parasite, which resulted in a mutation. And it's a great boss fight where you're on a boat and you've got a spear.
I don't like.
I love that boss fight. It's great.
I don't like that boss fight.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. That's bugging me what the enemy was called. But it was a mutated giant water creature. You throw a spear at it and it's attached to the boat and you get pulled along, and you have to hit it with
then
a spear.
you have to like cut yourself free or whatever.
Yeah, and you have to you get that button bashing moments and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what creature actually is it?
Wait, whose turn is it?
I think it's yours.
Yeah, it's yours.
Is it mine? Oh, okay. I want to say
Del Lagos, by the way, was the name of it. It just came to me.
the name of the lake.
No, I was just thinking of the name of the creature. It's Del Lago, I think, or something like that.
Wait, so what are you? So you're asking like what like the creature actually is?
What the species?
Yes, it's a mutated animal that was Las Plagas, and it resulted in a mutation which made it the way it was. But what creature was it originally? Although still is, but a mutated version.
Let's see. So
I reckon you won't get this. I'm just saying. I'm just throwing it out there.
I want to say. Let's see, what creature was it? Water creature. I want to say jellyfish.
Give me like that. Jellyfish? No.
What?
Yeah, no. I have no idea.
Weirdest jellyfish I've ever seen.
I was originally gonna say like Cthulhu, but
it's a freshwater lake as well, dude. You're not gonna get me jellyfish in there. Go on, Ethan. You gonna have a go at it?
Alligator.
No, good shout though. It is actually a salamander.
What?
A
Holy
very
crap,
gigantic, horribly mutated salamander.
Good night. That's awesome.
Still 4-0,
Yeah.
but I gotta say, you pretty much wrapped it up now, Ethan. But Jay, JT, you're playing for honor here.
Honor points.
So because you've got no point, you've got no points, dude.
I got no points. Yeah.
No points. Right, Ethan, you'll get this question. You'll get this question. Early in the game, Leon rescues an animal from a trap. What animal is it?
Oh, I think I was checking my phone.
Or at least
Got it?
you have the option to rescue an animal from.
Oh. What was it? Was it deer? No.
No.
Ah.
Jay.
It was a dog.
Yeah, some sort of wolf anyway. I don't know. But
or wolf. Yeah, it was a canine of some sort.
I like how it comes
I
back and
remember
it assists you. If you rescue it, it will assist you. So it makes me wonder how many people actually didn't rescue that dog. And and listeners, if you didn't rescue that dog, burn in hell, okay?
Whoa.
If you didn't rescue that dog, even though he was a virtual dog, if you passed that up, you were a scumbag, okay?
And I want to say like too, like with the salamander, right? I was gonna say snake, but I knew that it was no snake, so that's why I went with jellyfish.
Well, I thought it was some sort of fish, like some sort of whale, but then
in
again,
the
it's a
beginning I
freshwater
thought it
lake.
was like a snake, but the freshwater lake.
Yeah. So Jay, you have a chance to get another point here. I keep calling you Jay. But anyways,
JT.
So JT, yeah. So throughout the game, Leon is in contact with an assistant, who is a total cliche, who radio contacts him at various points in the game.
Shit.
What is her name? I think except just her surname here, because you don't really get her first name in the game, I don't think.
The chick with the glass.
Yeah, and then she takes them off, and he's like, "Hey, no glasses."
Hey.
Like, "Oh, you fucking I was like,
Yeah,
"What are you
right.
doing with the glasses?"
Shoot, what's her name? I just had a scene with her, like as I was trying to remember the game. I was playing it a bit. Shoot, I do not remember her name.
No
I'm
worries.
gonna go with Alexa.
No.
Oh,
Take it.
Oh gosh.
throwing it
Liana.
out there.
Liana.
Leona.
It's Ingrid Hannigan.
Oh, I would
Is her
never
name?
remember that.
Oh,
Literally.
Hannigan.
Alright.
That's right, Hannigan.
Yeah.
Shit, okay.
All right, last question, and it's on you, isn't it, Ethan? What are your name? Throughout the game, and hidden in many areas, are items that Leon can shoot and retrieve. Items that, when given to the merchant, can grant, in one case, a specialized handgun. What are these items?
Treasure?
I was looking for something a bit more specific.
Oh, gosh, I don't know.
They're hanging from all sorts, and you gotta basically shoot them down
Yeah,
and collect them.
I know what you're talking about. That's just treasure that you have to shoot down, right?
They have a name.
Relics? Relics? I don't know.
No.
Okay.
JT, do you want to take it?
Yeah, I'm gonna say jewels, like ruby, like stuff like
No. See, you're in the right ballpark in terms of things I would accept, but they're not really jewels, they're actually medallions.
Gems? Medallion? Oh, yeah, okay. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Alright, there we go, guys. That's our quizzing over and done with, and that dry patch at the end there, with no questions being got. Ethan had a resounding victory of 4-1. So, is that resounding? Is that right? That sounds very good. So, guys, we are running way over. So I think we should really have to wrap it up. So I'm going to ask you guys, where can people follow you? Where can, if you want to get in touch with you or follow you on Instagram or Twitter or wherever, where's the best place to get you there, Ethan?
Well, you can catch me over on my Twitter account saying, "What are you buying?"
I really wanted to talk about the merch.
Not creepy at all.
I love
I promise I'm not selling anything shady over there. I think.
Sure.
Anyway, my Twitter account, my Twitter handle is @linkachuchu. It's LINKACHUCHU. You can catch me tweeting about all sorts of things. Smash Brothers comes out in 6 days, and I guarantee I will be spamming your feed nothing but Smash Brothers content. Anyway, JT, what's yours?
My Instagram, where I upload all my photos of photography, is cosplay_book, and it is where you will find out like what conventions I go to as well. As well as Twitch, where I stream all my gameplays, mostly on PS4, at cosplaybook, all one word. And yeah.
Cool. The best place to follow myself is my Instagram. Is probably the best place because that is where I post most of my retro game collecting shenanigans. And that is at level 80 Space Ninja. That's LVL80 Space Ninja. And recently I posted my images of the new Philips CDI that I picked up. So if you want to see more of that, that is the best place. You can also follow me on follow the show rather on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and that's at Retro Rumble Pod. Pretty much everywhere. The show is also available now on iTunes as well, so just search Retro Rumble Podcast on iTunes if you prefer to get your podcast that way.
Did you mention Twitter as well? Did you mention Twitter as well? We're on Twitter as well.
I am. Oh yes, and we are on Twitter. Yes, Retro Rumble at Retro Rumble Pod on Twitter. And Ethan, I believe you manage that, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
It is yourself, isn't it?
At Retro Rumble Pod, it's capital R, capital R, capital P. So.
Cool, excellent. And do join our Discord as well. Go to our website, cultureofgaming.com, where you'll find a link to that, or there'll be links to that in the show notes of this episode on the YouTube page or the podcast episode, the audio episode. So I just realized something, guys. I missed a really good opportunity in the beginning to say, what are you playing in the style of the merchant, but no. Yeah.
What are you playing?
So, what do you play? He's got kind of a, I don't know what he's kind of got a kind of Cockney accent about him. I can't quite make his accent sometimes. I wanted to talk about him as well because he's an interesting character. I want to know what you guys think.
Opportunity's over, David. Let it go.
Oh well, never mind. Yeah, we've got to wrap up, guys. So thank you for listening, John, Ethan. Thank you for joining us, and listeners, we'll catch you next week. We tend to aim for Friday here on Twitter, but organisation and sometimes our life just gets in the way. So just follow us on Twitter, Discord, and Instagram, and you'll be notified of when new episodes are about to go live or when they're available on iTunes, etc. So yes, we'll catch you next time, and thanks for listening.
Thank you.